This is Jpar, and this is the new review. This week on the show, we have Myles, we have Da Boo,
Hey!
and for the first time, we have Clayton.
Hey.
And for the first time, it sounds like Boo aged 70 years overnight. Hi!
Hi, guys!
Hi, guys!
It's Ron LaFlame again. Yeah, I don't know, I'm on the boat, guys. Anyways, in case you're wondering, this week we are going to review a little Final Fantasy movie that came out not that long ago based off of number 15, which is called Kingsglaive. Now, this is actually the third installment, or not the third installment, but I should say the third computer animated film based on the Final Fantasy series. The first one was Spirits Within, which came out in 2001, and the next one was... We had to wait 4 more years after, and we got Advent Children, which was based off the Final Fantasy VII characters, and that came out in 2005. Of course, that starred Cloud Strife and Tifa and Sephiroth and all those popular names that we really know that are, engraved into this franchise. So now let's bring you up to what is the third Final Fantasy movie. This is Kingsglaive, and it is based off the new Final Fantasy game that's coming out. It was actually kind of a plan by them to release this with the game and even a series. So it was kind of an interesting way to market this, to bring this all out at once. But it was, we will be talking about it. But before we carry on, why don't you guys introduce yourselves to the crowd a little bit better?
Introduce ourselves, or maybe how the Final Fantasy series affected our lives?
I think you should explain that, but right before we get into there, I'm going to tell you about the director of this movie. It's Takeshi Nozu. Writer is Takashi Hasegawa. And it has the voice talents of Aaron Paul, Lena Headey, and Sean Bean. So Aaron Paul you should know from Breaking Bad, and the latter two you should know from Game of Thrones. So, we got some great voice talent in here, we got some great computer animation in here, but how does the story hold up? We'll tell you in just a second. How did Final Fantasy affect you, Clayton, when you were growing up? And how did the first 2 movies of this, before you saw this, affect you?
I was super excited for all the Final Fantasy movies that came out, but Final Fantasy games themselves continually got better and better and always pushed the envelope, and the graphics and the worlds that they transported you to were just above and beyond anything else that came out at the time. The summoning system, the way they constantly pushed combat. They tried to reflect that in the movies, but I don't really feel that it came out as well as they wanted it to. And the Spirits Within, at the time, the animation was amazing, but, let's face it, it didn't exactly hold up all that great.
Now, could someone fact check for me when the first Final Fantasy came out on the original Nintendo?
Oh, that's a good one.
87.
87, says Clayton. So you're saying Final Fantasy heavily influenced your childhood then?
Well, yeah, because other games were like side-scrolling, whatever, especially on the NES, the first couple. They were side-scrolling, shoot-em-ups, beat-em-ups, whatever, and then along comes this game that has a complete overhead map. There are character stats.
It's kind of like a role-playing game. It's like a D&D style game, which was, adapted to a Nintendo console system.
Yeah, exactly. It had battery save capabilities, and it was buggy as all hell. It wasn't a great game, but, it laid the groundwork for everything that came afterwards.
Yeah.
You know what? You brought up a really good point. Final Fantasy 1 saved. That was my biggest gripe with a lot of those...
No passwords, actual battery save.
You didn't have many games that had a battery save file.
You had to invest time. Okay,
if
I'm going to be
for sure
Mario 3, I better fucking...
But both Zelda games,
yeah,
Zelda 1 and 2, you could do the save on. And Final Fantasy, and I think those were the only 3 games that had a save on the regular Nintendo.
I'm trying to think the first Metal Gear.
No, there must have been more.
No, I feel...
Dragon Quest did saves, I'm pretty
sure. Did it?
Too.
Okay, well that's interesting.
Sure.
Anyways, not many games did it back then.
Yeah.
But not many games did it back then, so it was quite an amazing thing. And you're right, it took what normally was mainly consisted of side-scrollers on Nintendo, and like whether it be an adventure game like Mario Brothers, where it's like platform jumping, or whether it be like a beat 'em up like Double Dragon or something like that. This was vastly different. I mean, even different compared to Zelda, even though Zelda was its own unique thing. This was still even a little bit different than Zelda. You know what I mean? But you still have that top-down view like Zelda, and but it's different because you had the experience and you had the hit points. It was like very
a separate battle system with actual strategy to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like a new kind of concept for. It was really an old concept. They just adapted it to your TV screen for Nintendo.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what about the status effects following you outside of the battle? I thought that was cool. Your guy can get burned, frozen, poisoned, and then that affects the rest of the game too. I don't know. I thought that was pretty cool.
Or Square's long tradition of never having status attacks ever affect a boss. Immune.
See, a lot of what you guys are describing, I feel like I missed out on. So I think out of this group here, I think I'm probably the least experienced with Final Fantasy. The only one I probably had played was the original. So I do feel where you guys come across with the lack of the save option, but it's more like it was a game that if you did invest time, felt one of the most rewarding. But I kind of feel like I missed out on the rest after that. I've heard of what I've missed out. Some of the movies we've obviously seen over the years have really kind of brought a lot of that magic to screen, but didn't capture, from what I understand, is the story element to it. Either way, I still think that these movies lately seem to be doing a just effort, almost bringing out some of the better elements. But I don't know about this one. This one's kind of got me curious, actually, in some ways. And I'm curious to actually hear what you guys have to say.
All right, so how the movie, how do the movies affect you, Boo? Like Spirits Within, Advent Children?
Spirits Within, I wasn't really too impressed. Well, I think, Clay, you made a good point. It was at the time. It was just visually. It was inspiring. It was kind of
Yeah.
It was absolutely breathtaking on how specifically detailed it was, right down to the hair. The hair was always that one thing that they always got wrong, and in this case, I felt like they were that much closer to getting it almost perfect. There was still something that was wrong there, but that's like anything else. But anyway, the movie just didn't carry itself for me, I think, over the years. So I never felt like I wanted to go back to watch it. It wasn't a rewatch at all. And when I think on it, it had almost little to no significance to the feel of the Final Fantasy games in any way, other than Gaia. I think Gaia was the reference to the being within the planet that was dying or something like that. That was the only thing that was Final Fantasy-ish about the whole thing. Yeah. Other than that, there was nothing else. Advent Children, that's a different story. That was beautifully done. I think you brought up another good point with the whole combat. Combat, in my opinion, was one of the elements visually that brought up the video games to me over the years. Even though I never played them, I knew what they were visually. But with Advent Children, it had kind of brought a lot of that combat properly from the game to movie. Yeah. Even though it was their own take on it. I remember at the end of Advent Children, I think it was the aerial combat moves they were doing. It was get so out there that it was like, okay, yeah, that's hands down. That's Final Fantasy no matter what, right? I could see that happening in the game. Leading up to, I guess this is the third movie, is it?
Yeah.
Third
that's
movie.
It? We've only had 3 Final Fantasy movies? I think we done
There were some animated ones in the late 80s and early 90s.
Right.
These are the
Sorry,
animated
I do have to acknowledge those. You're right.
Now, anyone who hasn't... anyone who hasn't followed these, none of these games are connected. None of these movies are connected. Just so much like the games, none of them are connected. It's different characters every time, different scenarios, just a similar world than the other ones. You have familiar elements such as chocobos, moogles, or some other things.
You kind of have to explain what those are if you're going to use them.
They're just monsters. They're basically monsters, and there's these unique creatures to this world. So they have these little creatures that you will see or referenced every once in a while through here, or even just certain magics or summons, certain creatures like that come into play. You do kind of see a little bit in everyone, except for, like Boo said, Spirits Within, which felt really distant from the rest of the Final Fantasy.
And it's weird too, because that was the first attempt at bringing that universe to film in this case, not a non-animated sense. It was a 3D animation. They still did a great job. There was a lot of great things I pulled from that movie that were great, that I guess they did right in the next following years with other movies. But to this day, I still feel out of the 3, if I dare say, I might have to say that Advent Children still tops the 3, I think, for me, because of what it almost represents, I guess. It has a much more iconic feel for me.
I feel like the Final Fantasy VII characters with Cloud and Barret, Tifa, those characters, we got pretty close to them in Final Fantasy VII. I think that was they had really good storytelling at that time. Final Fantasy was at its peak when Final Fantasy VII came out. I'm pretty sure it was the best-selling game at that time. Might have possibly broke even Super Mario 3's record. Not 100% about that. But it was definitely a huge selling game on the PlayStation. And it was big because Square made the jump from Nintendo to PlayStation. So it wasn't on the Nintendo 64. You had to get the Sony to get it. It was a 3-disc game. It was crazy. So much like that, it's a very epic series. And that's what they always try to do. That's why it's 3 discs to play the game. Amazing cutscenes at the time, which look like shit now. But when it was back then, we were amazed. I can safely say that none of these movies look like Final Fantasy VII, because all of these movies, Spirits Within, Advent Children, and this one, Kingsglaive, all do have something in common. At the time, it was the best CGI at the time. I mean, well, even this one, I don't know if it's the best CGI right now for this one, but it's still very, very excellent CGI. The animation is really, really beautiful, and that carries through. This one has some Final Fantasy elements. I would agree. Advent Children is better. So let's go around the table now, and we're going to give this thing a quick rating, because we're actually running out of the 10-minute time limit here, because we did a history on Final Fantasy.
Which is kind of necessary.
Very
Yes.
brief history.
Yes.
You can keep going.
It was
We totally could keep going. We can have a whole episode where we talked about the history of Final Fantasy.
Yes.
People have done that.
I know they
But have they done it justice? You know?
You can look elsewhere and find hours of that online.
But why look elsewhere when you could look here?
when you can look right here.
Yeah.
We promise nothing, but we can at least promise you some stuff about Final Fantasy.
So, continuing.
So how does this movie affect you guys? First impressions, don't give anything away, please, and a rating as to why you've come up with that. And Clayton, since you're new on the show, you will be first to start us off.
Okay, well, like you said, the computer animation is absolutely top-notch. This is the first one that I'm sure that they actually trained the facial animations and the lip-syncing specifically for the English audience. The facial expressions and the lips match up very well to what's actually going on screen. The lighting, the special effects are unreal. Like, the movie looked great. Like, it really did. And my one issue with actually how it looked was I had a problem with the sound mix, actually. Some of the characters, I found myself when I actually really wanted to know what was going on, I actually had to watch it with subtitles. Because they have so much ambient atmosphere and music going on in the background that a lot of times there are a lot of words that get lost. And with the heavy political talk in this movie, it's really important to catch all the names, all the characters, who's doing what, and where they're going. So, but for my rating as a movie, I give it 3.5.
All right, 3.5. That's pretty solid from Clayton here. And Myles, take it away.
Okay, so I'm going to echo a few of your points. The CGI was amazing. For me, I think my takeaway was it was closer to the original Final Fantasy with the wizards, like black hats and white hats. That was like, that's a deep cut for me. That's Final Fantasy 1, and going up to like Final Fantasy 6, it was all mages, and so that I really liked. And right off the bat, they start with an amazing like battle between different wizardry. Like, I don't even want to give away too much, but
Yeah, you're actually going to spoilers.
okay, I'm going to spoiler down. But anyways, it was for me, there was a big nostalgia factor. Like chocobos, I would definitely be like, oh look, a chocobo. But when you start doing magic spells and different covenants of magic fighting each other, that's where I was hooked.
Okay, so it's safe to say you liked the little bit of nostalgic throwbacks
Yes.
from Final Fantasy.
And
Okay.
I'm going to echo your point on the sound. Honestly, because there were so many characters, and every character was very important, the sister of protagonist or the father of antagonist, and you have to follow it all, but you don't catch it because the score was so good and the special effects were good, but you couldn't hear what they were saying. So I actually watched it with subtitles.
Yeah,
I had to. It was the only way to do it. Because I got lost 40 minutes in. I didn't know who was important. If he dies, is that bad? I didn't know. It was hard to follow. So if I had to give it a rating,
I mean, it's even hard to say. Give it a rating, yeah.
I'll give it a rating. I'm going to give it a 2.5.
2.5.
I feel like you might go that low.
So it's easy to say without getting the spoilers that it's definitely about like two kingdoms that are kind of at turmoil.
Yes.
And they're
Yeah,
trying
we should
to
probably
come
talk about
to
the-
some sort of agreement as to, well, like you said, it is hard to explain a bit. They're trying to come to some sort of agreement so they're just not at war anymore. And I
That's
don't know.
basically
I
it.
mean, it's about like these group of people who are called the Glaives.
There's some political children involved too that are important.
Yeah, so I mean, it's hard to like give too much away, but that's just to get you started. So it's very Final Fantasy-ish, where you got like one kingdom against another kingdom, even typical fantasy kind of stuff.
Well, like Myles was saying, one half uses technology, the other half actually uses magic.
Yeah.
There's a very large difference between the two sides.
And those actually two things that you see a lot of in Final Fantasy are those two things. That's the mixture of those two. So I should probably explain that there is a couple key characters. Nix Ulrich, which is voiced by Aaron Paul. Luna Frey Knox Florette? I don't know. Lena Headey does her voice. And King Regis Lucius Calum
Sean Bean.
is Sean Bean. And in case you're wondering if he dies in this movie,
Oh,
I'm
no.
not going to tell you just yet.
Okay. That's how you know.
Gotcha! That's how you hook them in to make them listen to the rest. Boo, why don't you tell us quickly why you give it the rating that you do without giving anything away?
I'm not going to repeat everyone's same comments with the visuals and sound, because I feel like those are all kind of obvious. If I had to really just take away anything for especially someone like me who has not had a very close following to the games, so I really have to lend them the effort, I guess, for trying to bring out some of the detail that I never see, period. So you guys had it right. It was like that, struggle between two halves. There was, the way the story was told. I didn't quite notice until you guys pointed out the flaws of the sound in that respect, because I think I remember thinking back on a moment when I couldn't quite hear them right, but I let it just kind of slide. Thankfully, it didn't really ruin the movie, but I'll say this. I was leaning on a 2.5, but I think because it's still, to me, a movie that doesn't deserve that much of a hit. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5, and for one big reason, I feel like out of the 3 official movies that we've compared so far, this is the only one that I feel like on its own could stand on its own 2 legs as a simple story. I feel that it is part of one bigger story, but it really has a really strong hold on its own out of the 3. I know Advent Children, for me, when I even think back on it, I still get really confused as to where the whole story went and how it ended, because it was just sheer action all the way through, and I feel like that's just what it was meant to be. This one actually had a nice pace. And on top of that, I really do like the blend of the 2 worlds. I think we were saying, as you might pointed out, technology versus magic. And I think even going further, saying almost like they had a modern day take on what happens when magic is present within our modern day world. And by respecting that, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, the one thing you notice right away about this movie, like I said, the beautiful animation and the voice acting is top notch. So that's 2 things right off the hop is amazing about this movie. You got this beautiful animation. It's pleasant to the eyes. It's got these great actors, like names that you know, so you recognize their voice, and they're actors that you probably like. I mean, most people like Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones, so they're known actors. It's even pleasant to listen to, And if you're not listening to, the voice actors' voices, then you're listening to music that kind of sounds like it kind of belongs to Final Fantasy. So it's very pleasant to listen to. Very pleasant to watch, and it looks so cool and so epic. It just looks so awesome. But what the hell's going on, man?
Yeah.
What the hell is going on?
Thank God.
I can't figure this shit out. I was like in like about 40 minutes or 50. First 50 minutes, I think I was good. I'm like, okay, I get it. I know this is happening, that's happening, and then things just started happening. I'm like, wait, why is that? What? Wait, what? And then I just got lost. And it's like, okay, now they're just trying to throw everything at us. And it's just like, okay, calm the F down. Like, you gotta bring it back down to earth. So explain some things to us. Maybe it's lost in translation because it's originally a Japanese movie kind of thing. I don't know. I know even like Advent Children and Spirits Within, they try to be this, they try to have like, not so much like a twist ending, but it's like a little deep kind of meaning to the story. And I feel like this kind of tries to do it too, but I'm not really quite sure where they're going with it. So I am going to give it a 3. And it does get a pass, that 3, because of the brilliant animation and the great voice acting. But I mean, if it didn't, and because it's Final Fantasy, but if it didn't have those 3 factors, it wouldn't be that good. But it has like a lot of great things that you don't see in any other movie, which is the beautiful animations, a feast to the eyes. And I can't complain about that voice acting, so. Bickety bam.
Yeah, where do you go from there?
So now, so what we got? I got 3 here, 3 with Boo, 2.5 and 3.5. So not bad, but, you know, overall. Be cautious, you know? If it's something that you're into, then yeah, go for it. Final Fantasy. Even if you're into animation, you should just go see it for that. You know, even if you like some of these actors, maybe you want to hear them, you know, connected with this kind of story. Still a good way to go with it. But so check it out. But I mean, unless you're like a fan of the previous ones or even know a little bit of Final Fantasy, I think you at least need that to go in first. It's not an easy one that I could recommend to anyone and say just go watch this. I think you have to know a little bit about Final Fantasy before you go in. And even if you do know about Final Fantasy, you're still going to feel a little lost like we are.
Be aware.
All right, so let's flip over into Spoiler Town. Now we are going to dig into what we really like and what we don't like about this movie. And I could hear these two just going crazy. So who wants to take it first? Who is going to say their best?
No. Scissors, one hand.
Okay.
Oh. What's the best part of the movie? It could be a scene. It could be an actor.
Okay.
It could be the CGI.
For me, the best scene in the entire movie is the opening scene where they reference Diamond Weapon from Final Fantasy VII. They drop him into the combat, and as soon as I saw it, the hair on my arm standing up, right away it said to me, this is Final Fantasy. One of the most iconic enemies from the entire franchise that anybody who still plays the series will know about was present right away. And like you said, black magic users. Black mages.
I really appreciate seeing the black magic users too.
Yeah. Same here.
And the movie actually, the deeper you looked, as you said with the black mages, the deeper you looked, the more references there were to be found. In the scene where Crow is leaving for Altesia or Tenebrae, there's a speedy chocobo delivery van. Later on, there is the huge air battle, and inside the air battle is an octopus-like creature. And anybody who's played Final Fantasy knows that is Ultros from Final Fantasy VI. He's in there. It's him. It is undeniable.
Okay, see, I was confused with that part.
They inserted it as a reference. That's why. Because it immediately felt tacked on, but still, I looked at it and I said, that's Ultros. There are a couple other points,
I got
too.
really confused at that point. I'm like, why did that happen now?
See, I feel like that's maybe a kind of an error on their part from a director's point of view. I mean, if I'm someone like me, not knowing what that is, I feel just like Jason. I mean, I'm like, well,
me and him are looking at it, and he's like, where'd the space octopus come from? I'm like,
that is exactly what it is. And the thing is that as soon as you see it, it's undeniable. You know exactly who it is. So,
except for the people who don't know who it is.
It felt hacked in, but at the other hand, it felt like they were very much trying to cram the movie full of references that longtime Final Fantasy fans would immediately recognize.
Which I guess I can appreciate if I was a Final Fantasy major fan. I think that's the whole point there you're making, though, right? These are elements that no one else would really catch upon, I guess.
Well, otherwise. Like when Nyx is watching TV too, there's a green cartoon character that gets thrown in the back of a jail truck.
Yeah.
That's a Malboro, a longtime Final Fantasy enemy, and I had a couple other that I can't think of right now. But yeah, they were actually, the more you looked, the more references you actually found. Okay. Which I thought was pretty cool.
Alright, so what's your least favorite?
Oh god. When Nyx uses the word whilst.
Whilst.
That is my most hated word of 2015, 2016. Nobody speaks proper English. Nobody needs to use that word. And when he said it, it just bounced right off the side of my ear. It drove me nuts. So that was my single worst part about the movie.
All right.
Because of the word whilst?
Well, I have to agree with you because there were some English actors and then all of a sudden Aaron Paul. So he would throw in British words.
I'm going to use my limit breaker, bitch.
And that, exactly, it came off like that. Like this stoner American in the middle of this kingdom. Like, how did he make it?
Magic, bitch.
Magic.
I used magic, bitch.
Yeah, his problem is that I think he's becoming this generation's Mark Hamill. He's just descending into voice acting, and I don't really think that's the path he wants to take, but that's kind of weird.
Hey, it works for Mark Hamill.
Not everybody's Mark Hamill. Aaron Paul is not Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill's voice acting, just a segue.
Well, until they
so
do
good.
Breaking Bad, The Meth Awakens, Aaron Paul's not going to have his resurgence.
Oh.
What were you saying?
Well, Mark Hamill, he did the iconic Joker for me for years on Batman the Animated Series, and then a few movies. And now he's going to be starring as the Joker on TV.
Mm-hmm, that's cool.
So the turnaround is just so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to get his shot.
What I'm getting at is if Aaron Paul turns into the next Mark Hamill, that's fine. Because it's just going to come right back around.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, well,
I'm
if he
not
does
too
good,
worried.
if
I'm
you
not too
do
worried about
good
him.
work, people will recognize.
Yeah,
Exactly.
actually.
All right, so your favorite and least favorite, Myles.
Oh, so you stole the opening scene, which was amazing. I like the weapons, because Final Fantasy VII, I'm just going to talk to your point. Final Fantasy VII, I've spent so much fucking time with that game. I was married to that game. I had to beat everything in the game, and the 3 final weapons. Like, you can beat Sephiroth, and you think the game's over. It's not over. You still got summons, you still got to raise some chocobos, and now you got the weapons, and that diamond weapon,
Was it hard to find one?
The Magnifique. Oh, yeah.
Well,
All your guys are at level 99. So it's like...
So why bother playing the game if your characters are just gonna fucking one hit kill
honestly,
everything?
this is really bringing me back. The summons alone were minutes long.
Oh, nice.
Go put on a pot of coffee, and then you check in every once in a while. Every 10, 20 minutes, like a baby. You hear it crying? No, that's just the summon halfway through now. That's part of the summon.
The summons were amazing. In
The
Final
summons
Fantasy
were
VII.
amazing, and you needed those summons for the weapons, and you needed them so many times that now it was like this never-ending movie. Spent 2 hours fighting a fucking weapon. So yeah, the opening scene blew my mind. I'm like, I'm in. And the boomerang dagger teleportation.
That was cool.
I loved it, and I loved the way they
That was
used
very
it.
cool.
Like, I almost feel like they had
That opening
physics
scene.
scientists in that fucking...
If the movie
Yeah,
had
okay, how are we going to get from here to there using this teleportation boomerang thing? I'm like, oh my god, I love this.
the movie could have ended at the first 15 minutes, I think I would have been happy.
Same here.
I was like, they did a really cool scene, and then there was a lot of talking.
And
not
that's
much
my
of a
least
action
favorite
ending,
part
but-
about it, is it felt like it started off so strong
Yeah.
that the continuity within itself kind of like got lost, and I think it might have been the voice acting and the sound. I didn't know who this person was, or if what it meant.
Yeah.
Like that they were doing.
I
this
felt like
now,
they were
and-
trying to do like a more Game of Thrones thing with the characters. I honestly felt like they were just like, hey, here's Final Fantasy, but here's elements of Game of Thrones, like Assassin's Creed, like Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto. Let's just throw everything that's popular at one thing. Just throw it all into one
very
game. And
shoehorny.
Yeah.
They honestly could. It's a word, shoehorny.
Shoehorny.
Let's remember that one. Shoehorny.
that means someone who wants to fuck shoes a lot,
yeah,
right?
yeah, you're shoehorning.
Someone has a foot fetish.
There was that he shoehorned so many amazing scenes that even that first scene alone, if they would have had like a year battle of them trying to take down this Bahamut / weapon, that would have been it for me. I would have been cool with that. Just a big cutscene. Because that's what this movie seemed like to me. I'm going to get into the bad stuff now.
So what was the good thing?
The good thing was the
opening
beginning
scene.
scene. It just really brought me back to a
Final
childhood
Fantasy. Okay,
thing.
cool.
Because during the summers as a kid,
So it's safe to say the throwback of Final Fantasy and that opening scene, the memories from
the
that.
nostalgia factor.
Okay,
was there.
cool.
The bad stuff, I got lost a lot. And if the movie would have stopped maybe 40 minutes in, I would have been happy. But it seemed like you were cut. You started off halfway through a movie, and you ended 3/4 of the way through a movie. That's what it seemed like to me. It didn't have that beginning where you had the development of these characters and know who to root for and who to be upset with. Didn't have that for me. And then the end, you have the one magician jester of the other faction, the technology magic faction, and he seemed like he was going to kick everyone's ass. The whole movie with the feathers, he had like the feathers.
Yeah!
He seemed like he was the fucking top
Never
dog. He didn't give a
used
shit.
him.
He never. Yeah.
He was such a cool character. Like, are we gonna see that guy? And it's like, no.
He walks into the throne room and he's just like, you have to like bow. He's like, I don't bow.
I know,
I'm
he's
like,
like one
oh,
of the coolest
fuck,
characters.
This fucking guy.
He's even like kind of making jokes on the side in the ship while the battle's going on. You're like, what's this guy
He's
gonna
like,
do?
Exactly. He's like, why did
No,
you even need
nothing.
this? I could have taken care of this. And I feel, and the end of the movie was like, okay, go get him. And it's like, yes. Movie ends. Like, oh, are you kidding me? So that was the problem for me. Is I know what they're going for. They wanted like this to be world building into the game.
Yeah, this is like the
so
first.
then you start the game
longer
somewhere,
story.
and this movie kind of filled that intro, but it didn't do it. If anything, it made me more confused, and I kind of don't want to play the game now because the trailers don't look anything like the movie. You're three a-holes in a Backstreet Boy band driving around in a car.
So once again, this is the part where it's spoilers. So the main character,
Oh yeah, we're in spoiler town.
Nick Ulrichs, dies at the end of this movie. He's not a character in the game. We followed this fucking guy, Aaron Paul, sound an asshole
Exactly.
around. And he dies at the end, and he's not even the one of the
It's
main
not
characters.
important. Yeah, who gives a shit? We're gonna play the game now. Is he gonna be the legend of all the bullshit he did? I don't know.
His story is largely irrelevant. It doesn't matter.
Awesome, and he's the protagonist, and he's the guy you follow from start to finish, and it doesn't even matter.
Okay, so
Perfect.
it bears noting though.
Great
that,
marketing.
Yeah.
I give this movie a 3.5 because I regard it as it is the first of two parts, and the problem with viewing it in the vacuum, like in a self-contained vacuum, is that it doesn't stand up all its own as a movie. But as an intro to the game, it actually works very well. A lot of the story arcs don't finish, like you said. The Chancellor of Niflheim, you never see him because he dovetails directly into the game. In years past,
That would have been perfect.
That
would have been perfect. If they would have blew their wad right at the end, take out the whole fucking city. Let's go crazy. Take out the whole city with a gesture. And then he walks back in the ship.
In games past, though, Final Fantasy has always started, especially starting in the PS1 era, with a short movie that kicks off the gameplay. If I have actually played Final Fantasy 15, I don't know if you have yet.
No.
But you will notice that it is very lean on story at the beginning. And I think that the point was they made the movie as the intro movie, but it got larger and larger and more complex until they finally said, look, we have to cut this loose. So they made it a self-contained movie because Final Fantasy 15 is very much a choose-your-own level of involvement game. You can race through the game in 20 hours or even 10 hours, or you can see everything it has to offer. If you really want to know what the backstory and everything is for all of the characters, you watch Kingsglaive and then you play the game and you do all the extra stuff.
And that is the biggest problem, is it's so specific to the game
Exactly.
that if you walked in off the street, like if my girlfriend never played any of these games, she would get confused at the first scene. What the hell's going on?
Exactly.
Who are the good guys? Because it seemed like the bad guys were... that was the biggest problem for me. Even in that beginning scene, who am I rooting for? If they didn't have that giant weapon, I wouldn't have known.
It's very hard to view it as, like I said,
without
self-contained,
without your own past history. They're
and
relying
without going
on
into the game.
Yes.
Like as a movie itself, it's a 2.5.
Oh, yeah.
As an intro to a game, it's actually a 3.5 because it's a very elaborate, well set up. It's hard to say that, right? Well, is it a 2.5 or a 3.5?
No,
but
and I
it
agree
depends
with
on
you.
the angle
I
that you're
agree.
looking at it from. So,
but we're here to review movies.
Exactly.
Right,
so I guess I have to
intro to
rescind.
rights.
I have to
That
rescind
is the
my
problem.
review
That
and
is
call
the
it a
problem.
2.5 then. So it's a 2.5.
Oh, wow.
Hey,
first time.
You already said 3.5.
Well, he defended it nicely, though. I think his
Yeah.
point of view, he's actually seeing it as though.
Well,
I'm
I see
seeing it from
picture,
two different ways,
Yeah.
and I did. If you watch the movie,
So what do you? So you're ending on a 3.5, right? You already said that.
Well, I'll say 3 then. Well, we'll take the average.
Wow, he's a wild card.
If you're gonna
Okay,
make me
no,
choose,
no,
if
no,
we're
no,
gonna bet
no,
on
no,
red,
no,
it'd be
no.
Bet on black too.
no,
Fuck it.
no.
YOLO.
By the time we're done this review, you're gonna tell me it's a 4. Like, come on. You can't change. 3.5 is where you
The
want to
movie
say
can't get
it
better.
is.
It can't get better. We haven't got better.
Let's be honest. 3.5 is your personal opinion, and it's just what you take from it. You know more about the game, and you know a lot about the series, maybe more than some of us. So it's safe for you to say it's a 3.5. That's your opinion. That's your opinion, man.
Oh no, yeah, that's true. I'm just saying, like,
That's the
viewed
reason I
movie-
gave it a 3, because I was like in between where you guys were.
Yeah.
You're totally pumped about it. He's
Yeah,
like,
I wouldn't say
well,
that.
okay,
I wouldn't
you're a
say
little
it.
more pumped than we are.
Let's just pump the brakes
I was
a little
pumped
bit here.
going in, and that was one of the biggest failing points For me, Advent Children hit all those notes that I liked, and that could be a self-contained movie because it had a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
See, I felt it was the opposite. I honestly felt
I had
Kingsglaive
it
like
because
that.
it ended. The movie ended. Sephiroth and all his little clone babies, they're gonzo.
Oh, don't get
yes.
me wrong. There's a beginning, middle, and end like any other movie, but I feel like Advent Children, there's so many questions that I was left with that I felt like I really needed to know my lore.
Advent
for anything
Children.
to make any sense.
I,
At least
you know
with
what?
this-
I wasn't confused with Advent Children. That's because I played Final Fantasy VII.
I didn't. Again,
See, and once again, that's another movie where you kind of
Yeah.
have to watch that or play that or
Yeah, but-
know of that to understand some of the stuff that happens.
and here's the thing: I could easily point out that's Cloud, that's Vincent. You know, like there were so many iconic characters, but it just there was a bigger picture that I could never quite see, and I think I'm always at that disadvantage. But at the same time, you pointed out, simply said, what are we doing? Movie reviews. So I think at a simpler level, I feel like that's why Kingsglaive. I don't know. For me, maybe I felt like it was a standalone movie more so than
If you
Advent Children.
when you watch it though, like, and especially the end scene bothers me, and that's what really suggests that it's part of something larger. Is that Libertas is taking the princess out of Insomnia, and then they're walking down the road and they're about to leave, and he's going to escort her to Altesia or wherever it is that they're going, and then she says, "No, sorry, I can't." Well, why? Because reasons. And then she just walks away.
Exactly.
And just
That's what I was
leaves him
ending.
there.
You're right. Didn't I say that?
And what a
Wasn't
terrible
that
way to
exactly what I
And
said?
then what the hell is the deal with all of this, like, proprietary technology? It's their own thing, you know, and then, like, magic, technology, fantasy worlds, and suddenly an Audi R8 for no particular reason.
Yes.
Oh,
What
but
the
it
hell was
sense.
that?
Yeah.
Suddenly just this high-end
Just
sports
Audi.
car?
Yeah.
there's
Only
like-
Audi made it.
You got the like modern day cars. You got these machines flying through the air. People
Cho-
still ride chocobos.
Huge
But
chickens.
You know what? I kind of do like that part though, because there was always this weird mesh between old technology, like windmills.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, but you could fly everywhere. It's like
There was
what?
always like people
And
had
magic.
airships and stuff.
Yeah, airships. It
So
didn't
did you
really make
say
sense.
your least favorite?
I did.
Okay, so your
You
favorite
couldn't
was
follow the movie. It was just terrible.
like we couldn't follow him. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, apparently.
No, it's just that when someone starts getting in there and then everyone jumps in, it's like, okay,
No,
did
no,
you-
I said my good and the bad.
That's,
all right, so
that's
you
the
can go
point.
on with yours now, Boo. What's your
I-
favorite and least favorite?
I'll be honest. After all this, I'm actually glad
Was
you.
it just me the whole time?
I'm actually glad you two went first, though, for a lot of good reasons. I kind of felt like a lot of my opinions had changed quite a bit. My one,
Oh,
honestly,
you guys swayed him.
well, no, but because not so much swayed me, but kind of made me
Just
see it in a
see where
different
our
light.
points
You
come
guys
from.
made two really great points. One of which simply being, and I hate to call it this, a big intro to a video game, but I can't simply say I can't call it that because to me it is a movie. I felt like honestly this was a standalone, story all on its own. I don't know why Advent Children doesn't do it to me, but whatever. That's a different debate. With this one in mind, though, I felt like my favorite, simply said, was actually the magic they had used with the knife. I think that was really cool. That had me so captivated. I felt like, okay, now I had to see a nice mix of the magic in its own right within this believable world that I had to kind of accept, right? And again, from my point of view, it's a little, obviously, a lot different than you guys. But as the story unfolded, you guys bring up like the Audi, you bring up the chocobos and all the other elements that to me brought in the elements of my world meets the Final Fantasy world. I accepted it easily. You guys, I guess, didn't like the Audi, I guess. I took it as such that there was this other world, part of the world that was still grounded in our world. I think that's how I left it. But my favorite had to be, again, the use of the magic with the knives. What I didn't like was what you had pointed out with the way the ending had occurred. And I think it had to do even more so because it's part of a bigger picture, just an intro to another story. Mm-hmm. I can kind of accept it that way in some ways, but it doesn't make it that much better of a movie, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Ironically, I still have to defend, though. It is a standalone movie. I know, in my mind, I know it's leading up to something bigger, which I don't mind. Now, my question is, do I really have to, play the game to get the better story now? And that's maybe my only question that comes to mind personally. Did I get the best part of the story, or did I just get a small taste of what the bigger, better one is? And I would feel disappointed if I found out it was the game that really, would have satisfied me.
So that is your least favorite part?
My least favorite is the way it ended. Again, because it didn't make me feel satisfied with the way the story really led up to. No different than how you guys hated how the hero ended.
Oh.
Sorry, I can't go. I gotta stay behind. Sorry, I don't know why. I just can't explain myself.
Yeah.
Because reasons.
Because reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because of reasons. And again, she just accepts it. But
No, she's the one who says it. She's
Yeah,
like,
she says
I'm a frail, high-born woman. I'm just going to walk out of this burning city across the country. I'm going to go meet my husband. I'll check you later.
That's what I said.
And he's like, but I'm going to come with you and defend you. I'm a guard of the king. I have a magic throwing knife. Nah, that's cool. I got this. It's cool. I got this. I got like a light silk dress on. I'm fair-skinned. Sun's not going to hurt me. Let's see. I got some suntan lotion. Like, it just makes no sense. Like, it made no sense.
you're absolutely right. It all ended to that effect of the ending just not being what it really could have been.
Not being there.
And
Yeah, you're right.
your favorite.
I already said my favorite really was simply said the magic and the use of the
Oh, okay.
knives magic wise, because it was probably the only use of magic for me other than, you're right, the beginning scene with the black magic. But again, I didn't take it as black magic. I took it as magic coming from evil men, other than it visually differently. But anyway, for me, it was the use of the magical knives. Again, the whole use of teleportation has been done, but the way they did it that way was very acrobatic and definitely brought up that Assassin's Creed feel for me. So I'm glad you brought that up.
All right. So this movie, what's my favorite? What is my least favorite? I think I've already kind of said my favorite is definitely the animation. It's beautiful. The voice acting is, it's actors, it just sounds pleasant. It just looks pleasant. It looks epic. It looks cool. It's everything it looks and sounds the way that you want it to look and sound. They're so right. That opening intro is awesome, but overall, the animation, voice acting sells it. Top notch. My least favorite, I think we've already covered that too. We get lost. We don't know, even as guys who know stuff about Final Fantasy, this is confusing. Is this character important? Sean Bean does die. The character does die. Just so you know.
It's a long tradition. of
Spoiler!
Sean Bean
Yeah,
dying.
too much.
Oh, that guy's gonna die. Voiced by Sean Bean.
It's
Called
a
it.
contract or
Called
something.
it.
He has to die 3 times in a show a year.
Is that Sean Bean? Well, I know how this is going to end.
Scene
Yeah.
Bean, Sean Bon dies again.
Yeah.
And that happens. So I think we already covered it. My favorite is the animation, and my least favorite is.
This still bothers me though. You guys keep bringing up the chocobos, by the way. Was there a chocobo at all throughout the whole movie?
Just on the side of the
Just on the side of the truck, they
the
referenced
chocobo.
one.
so not an actual chocobo,
There are
but it
no
was a
actual
visual of
chocobos
one.
in the
Yeah.
movie.
Okay, so
So-
it wasn't just me. Gotcha.
I think I pretty much said it right away. The first 50 minutes is great. You just start getting lost after that. Don't know what's going on. A space octopus shows up.
Is
We get confused.
Is that your least favorite? Is that your least?
Well, that's one of my least favorite because I didn't know what the hell that was. But just the overall confusion. Why am I confused? I was able to follow Final Fantasy, Advent Children, fairly well. And even though, Spirits Within has kind of a weird, convoluted story too, at least it was still easier to follow than this. Spirits Within isn't very good either storyline-wise, but once again, it's just a feast to look at. And that's where these Final Fantasy movies kind of break out, is just the amazing CGI. Especially if you look at Spirits Within, which was 2001, and you look at the animation, that was amazing for that time.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
Again,
Now it's as dry as a popcorn fart. It is.
I don't know, I've never went back and
I
watched
did
the old
2
Spirits
weeks
Within.
ago. Trust me.
Yeah,
Really?
it's not as good. Let
You went through
What
things
about
be
Advent
good.
Children?
glasses,
What
yeah.
about
Advent Children's still good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Oh
is.
God, yeah. That still stands nicely up.
I like to watch that.
So if
once
you're
a
gonna
year.
watch any Final Fantasy movie and you really love Final Fantasy VII, Advent Children is the one to go. If you want to get into Final
This
Fantasy
is a review for
15,
Kingsglaive. Watch something else.
yeah, watch some. How many times do I tell them that? I think I've told them that many times. I'm pretty sure we told them that for Superman 2. We're just don't waste your
Independence Day
time.
Resurgence.
Yeah, we told them not to watch that either.
Yeah, and it had the gall to make you think there was going to be a sequel at the end.
I
It's
know.
like, fuck you, Independence Day. You're not getting another try.
I
Or
just
these
had this
revenge
conversation today. The
Oh.
special effects were amazing, and everything else was
Just terrible.
as deep as an empty glass of water. That fucking movie was terrible.
Yeah, I don't want to go too much into that, but
Yeah.
God.
Listen to our review of Independence Day if you want to hear how bad it is.
Shameless
Spoiler
self-plug.
alert.
Speaking of self-plugs, you can always join the conversation
okay.
on Twitter at We Promise Nothing, drop the G. And apparently we're on Instagram, which is We Promise Nothing with a G. You can give us a whole like on Facebook. We really like when you do that. It's the We Promise Nothing Show. That's where, not the, it's at We Promise Nothing Show. That's where you'd find us on Facebook. We usually have games and stuff that we play there, Name That Scene, so you definitely want to join that page. Something else I've been noticing, you want to like, subscribe, and share, but on YouTube, you might want to click your alerts on because people have been losing subs apparently recently, so make sure you're always looking out for our new videos. Check every week or every 2 weeks because we always update. Make sure to check that out. Make sure to subscribe to us in case you got unsubscribed, and check the alerts. Make sure your alerts are on. That way you can always get our new videos and listen to them. Did I miss anything, guys?
I have something actually plot related because we never really talked about the plot except for the fact that we couldn't follow it that well.
We're not talking about the plot anymore. We're leaving the show, dude.
It gets too convoluted.
Oh, but there was so much going on.
Review is over.
So much bad.
The review is over.
Don't watch the movie.
Speaking about people
Goddamn
dropping
rookies.
subs, I love you, PewDiePie. Please don't cancel your channel.
How are we still here? I thought we were done.
He started talking. It became a thing.
Oh, I started this.
No, not you.
I feel like
Oh,
we're
no.
like,
Me.
I
The
feel like,
new
new
guy.
I feel like these are the ending credits of Ferris Bueller. You're just like,
Yeah.
This is Jpar signing out.
Myles leaving the building.
Clayton.
doing nothing apparently. just announcing himself.
Sitting here.
Da Boo going bye-bye.
And remember, if you disagree with anything you heard on the show today, you can leave a comment below. But as always, we promise nothing. Good night.
Dig it.